All right, welcome back to the On the Ball podcast. Feels a bit weird introing this one because we have just finished another episode, but we're back this time for NFL fantasy in particular. Joined by the usual suspects, Pilch and Curtis, and what we're going to be doing today is going through the four main fantasy positions and chatting about whose stock has risen in our eyes and whose has fallen. Before we get into that, though, we'll have a little bit of a fantasy wrap-up from the weekend. Pilch, how did was going to say a team name, obviously can't. How was your performance on the weekend?
Pretty dog shit until Monday Night Footy, where I had Aaron Jones, and he's put me from an average score to the second highest score, and I got the dub over the worst player in our league, so can't complain.
Yeah.
2-0.
Yeah, fair enough. There was a period there where I think it was about maybe do they say 3/4 time in NFL? Wait, I'm actually confused.
Yeah, they do.
At the end of the third quarter, in the first time slot, your team wasn't looking great. And then it all turned around. The Cincinnati boys got a few touchdowns, your Cincinnati wide receivers. And then, your fortunes changed from there on and everyone started doing decently. But, you ended up getting a great score because of Aaron Jones going massive. I think it was legit round 3 maybe last year where he went massive as well. So he loves these early season prime
against
time
the same
fixtures.
team as well.
Oh, Jesus. So what has that has he risen in your rankings, or are you going to look to use him as trade bait this week?
Both. He's certainly risen, but I think he'll be also good trade bait.
Yeah, fair enough. I would definitely be baiting him out after what we saw last year, but I don't want to get in your head as you are better than me. Kurt, how did porn star Jimmy fare this weekend?
Silly question, mate. Didn't break 100. Lost. Made some saucy trades during the week. Didn't pay off. Just don't want to talk about it. It just hurts, man.
Yeah. It's still very early in the season, mate, and you've got a good team. They're just not performing at the moment, mate. So I think you'll be right. I think everything will come together. We do only have 10 people in our league. 6 of them make finals, so you've just got to get in there. I myself had a very dodgy victory. I'll be the first to admit, undeserved. I think I got about the third lowest score, and I won by about 20. So that's what says it all. My opponent doesn't have the finest team, and his lineup selection wasn't great. I think he actually had Hollywood Brown on the bench, and I think if he started him, he would have got the dub. But so I'll count my blessings as last year. Those were the sort of games I would drop. I would play a team who does really bad, and they would be when I'd have my worst weeks. So thankfully, I've avoided that one this year, and I've gone 2-0, but not convincing at all for me. Pretty much all my players this week are in the falls, so that's always good to see from your side. But the Mish's Milk, man, we're 2-0. But it's not going as smoothly as the record suggests. But there was some outrageous trades last week. I'm not going to go through them all, but genuinely out of probably the top 30 players in fantasy, probably half of them swapped teams last week. Our league was very, very toey, and we love to see it. Once again, I'll just say how many of each position we have when we go through them. But before we get into the QBs, we have 2 in our league, obviously Superflex League. So we might say some that might not be relevant to one QB leagues, but just stay with us for the course. I'll start us off to get us into the rumor thing. I've got my little cheat sheet here, so don't mind me if I'm just looking down. But my first riser is Tom Brady. I have to say, never been a fan of this man in fantasy because I love a dual threader. I love someone agile. Then in saying that, I do have Carson Wentz and Jameis Winston in my team, but I had him at number 11 before this week, and he's had 20 red zone attempts in 2 games, and last year he had 84 red zone attempts for the whole season. So I was talking to you boys about it off air, and I think that him and Arians they're making a deliberate ploy to go for the touchdown season record. I think it's like 55 or something. I think Peyton Manning holds it. And at this rate, he's going to get there pretty comfortably. Obviously, an extra game as well. And he's going at 75% in the red zone, which is pretty outrageous. I think everyone else is below 60. So, yeah, Tom Brady is looking frightening right now. Obviously, the quarterback for one of the best teams in the league. And if they're not rushing in TDs, it's a pretty nasty fantasy recipe. So he's got to go up in my rankings. This one's an interesting one. I'm sort of unsure if I like my call because I think his completion percentage on the weekend was about 50%, and people are saying last year was a fluke. But Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills, I had him at number 7 heading into the weekend, and he's probably going to go up for me. And that's purely because I think he's up to like 6 red zone rushes for the year. And that's 3 on average, and about 20 to 30% of red zone rushes are TD. So almost locking in 1 rushing TD a week, which, as we have learned in Josh Allen's past, is absolutely OP because he can throw it like a lot of running QBs can't. And yes, I just think he's a bit of a wet, but I don't know. People saying he's not playing that well. He has played 2 very good defenses, on paper, but yeah, we'll have to see on that one. QB fallers, I have to say, obviously my main man, Jameis Winston, I'll be honest, didn't buy into last week at all, but I still had him very high from preseason. I didn't adjust my rankings last week, so I couldn't bait him away with his 5 touchdown performance because I had him higher than everyone else, which was a bit of a trap for me. I had him at number 10, and yeah, look, he's just not number 10, is he? I think he's still going to have a few good games here or there. He's got a good coach and all that stuff, but yeah, I think there's going to be quite a lot of stinkers in the mix, which is pretty annoying for me because I thought I'd stolen a QB1 from the draft, and it looks like he could be waiver worthy. And then finally, Dak Prescott. I love this bloke. He was my number 2 heading into the weekend, but yeah, unfortunately for pornstar Jimmy and other Dak Prescott owners, the Cowboys' run game looked absolutely phenomenal. Their O-line looked incredible, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot more running from the Cowboys with the Pollard and Elliott double-headed monster. I looked at their red zone ratio, and it was about 1-to-1 passing to running. And yeah, I still think he's going to be a very good quarterback in fantasy, definitely a QB1, but I think number 2 might be a little bit of an overshot for Dak and his owners. But yes, Curtis, QB rises and falls.
Rises had Murray. The man just keeps getting better. He's probably the best QB in fantasy as we talk right now. He was elite last year, and he just seems to keep getting better. And also had my man who loves to sit on my bench, Darnold. The man looks like he might be a consistent beast this year, pulling out the mid to high teens, which is not great, but it's not bad at all. And to be honest, when you play fantasy and you have a QB2, I personally love a consistent QB there that can just pop points on the board. For the falls, I had my man Dak, an absolute joke in performance, pulled out single figures for me, and then also had my other QB in Trevor. He's not what Fantasy Pro said in being QB 15 on PPR, and he looks like he might be more like a QB in the mid to high 20s. So he sucks.
stiff, but yeah, no, it's not looking great for him at the moment. Yeah, I don't know. That's why I just don't like going rookies. I know their value, but you never know what you're gonna get. Pilchos.
Yeah, Rice is going to have to go Lamar Jackson and then Sam Darnold as well, actually. Do I think he's a good QB? Absolutely not. But does he have McCaffrey and DJ Moore at his disposal? Yes. So that's just going to
disgusting, Pilch. Take that back.
Translate to points. So
take that
he's a
back.
riser.
Yeah, fair enough. Who are your falls, man?
And my faller, I've got just Tua.
Yes.
He got injured, so it's a bit of a cop-out, but I just don't really rate him at all. I think I said it last week as well. Just think he stinks.
Yeah,
so,
pretty harsh, but yeah, his O-line's shit. And yeah, it's not looking good for Tua at the moment as a fantasy prospect. Darnold's schedule upcoming is also pretty spicy, so he could be one to get your hands on in 2 QB leagues. Don't think he's relevant in 1 QB leagues, but play on.
Yeah.
Running backs? Oh, yet.
Yeah.
Bruh, has he even cracked 20 yet?
No, yeah, but only a matter of time.
So he's been
boys.
balling out against some real good teams, hasn't he?
Kurt, you know what he does, mate? You know he just passes
He's
it
on the
5
rise.
meters to McCaffrey or more, and then they take it.
And that's all you need in fantasy.
And he still scored 12.
Saints had
Scored
5
like
starters
19.
missing there. Anyways,
he's on the rise, boys. He's on the rise.
Yeah, all right. We'll back you in there. Running backs. I'll let Pilch start this one off.
Right. Risers, 2 men here, Aaron Jones and Derrick Henry. I was actually way too low on Henry last week, and he's showed me up with 47, so he's obviously a top 3 running back. And then Aaron Jones as well. And then fallers, I've got Kamara, just purely because what I said in the other episode, that the Saints offense just stinks. Winston's barely chucked up over 100 yards in each of his first 2 games. And as a running back, you need a good offense to get points. And Kamara's not one of those workhorses that pumps out 30 carries a game. So he needs some solid QB play to get him his points. Zeke as well, just because he's not getting the workload we thought. And then Clyde Edwards-Helaire, just because he stinks. Like, potentially the worst running back of all time.
You're such a dog. Like that is so rough. That is so rough. Oh my god. Yeah. Anyways,
I like him, but come on, get good.
No, that's outrageous. Well, it's pretty hard to tear up the box score when you're playing with the most talented quarterback of all time. But I'm just struggling to accept that one, really. I agree with your call about Kamara. I think he's a bit of a spicy buy low, though, because I just reckon he's going to get that many catches. But yeah, no, his touchdown scoring threat is definitely a worry. Darrell Henderson, love this bloke. Did last year, did this year. Traded him away before week 1. I had him as my number 16. But interestingly, the Rams have actually run it more than they've thrown it in the red zone. The red zone carries, he's up at about 80%. So I think Michelle's volume will increase as he gets more used to the offense, but he's seeing 68% of snaps. I just think, Henderson's a beast, and I reckon he's definitely one of the better RB2s you could get going, and I feel like he's not that well known. Like, he doesn't have big name value or anything. So if you have people in your league who are just casual fantasy players, I feel like you could rip them off. My fallers, Devin Cook. This is probably an interesting one, but item is my number 3 going into the weekend. My issue here is they don't seem to be as reliant on the run as they once were. They've got a new offensive coordinator, and Kirk Cousins has actually been playing really well. So I'm worried he's not going to get the volume that he has in previous years. He's only had 4 red zone carries so far across the 2 weeks. Game script has not suited them at all, and I don't know if it's going to continue to suit them because I don't think they have a great team. And he's still a running back 1, and I'm not even sure if he drops in my rankings. It's just I think a bit less of him after this weekend. And then finally Saquon Barkley. I still had him at number 4, but he's just not. At this point, I don't think he's an RB1. It sucks to see. His snap count was 67%. When he was at his best, it was up at around 80, 90. He did look better in week 2 than week 1, but I just don't think he has the volume right now to be top 5, even top 10. So, it's going to be a hard one because I don't think anyone would be keen to trade with you if you own Saquon, but yes, it's a tough one there. Curtis?
I'm going to start with Eckler. The man returned to the receiving running back beast that he is. He had 9 of 9 for 61 yards on the weekend. And if he can mix it up with that 17 rushes he had in the first week, I think he had, and he could actually be even better than what I had him on the board, which was 6. So I think he's a riser, especially for this week. I believe they play the Chiefs, and the best way to keep the Chiefs' offense under wraps is to keep them off the field. So I think the run game's going to be huge this week for them. I've also got Elijah Mitchell as well in my risers. The man did have a stinger and a shoulder injury this week. Was taken off, but did come back on in that last quarter. The reason I do have him in the risers is Sermon is injured on concussion protocol, out for the week. We have Hasty, who had an ankle injury, suspected to be out for a large portion of the season. So I don't know who they just signed from the practice. Well, it wasn't from their practice squad. It was from Cincinnati's practice squad. But it seems like Elijah certainly might be the main man at San Fran if he can get up this week. For the fall, just had the single man in Clyde. I think Clyde isn't a bad running back, like Pilch is saying, but I think if you're a fantasy manager owning Clyde, you got to have your alarm bells ringing, because the simple fact is he's not getting the volume. And if you complement with the fumble he had and the poor yards per carry, it's a significant concern. So yeah, if I have him, boys, I would be trying to offload him for the best possible price I can get.
Yeah, agree with those ones. I swear, like Eckler, his catching skills are ridiculous. Like some of the catches he whipped down the weekend were like that good. Did the Niners sign Kerryon Johnson, or was that another team? I saw that he got added somewhere.
Nah, it was some. I'll get it up. It's a little fancy name from the Cincinnati Bengals practice squad.
Yeah, no, I can't say I know who it is. But yeah, Kerryon signed for someone, and I remember thinking like, oh, that's interesting, but don't remember who it is. But we'll keep on rolling here. The wide receiver stocks. I actually found this one really hard to do fallers. There weren't too many that dropped in my rankings, to be honest, but there were definitely some risers. I had Mark Williams as the number one riser. I had him at number 28. I've been trying really hard over the first 2 weeks to get him into my team, but the owner won't budge, and fair enough. Last year, he had 85 targets in 15 matches. This year, 22 targets in 2. So looks like his role, they're using him a little bit differently. His yards per catch is down significantly. So last year, he was sort of, they confined him to pretty much a big play player when they needed a big yardage, or they could see a potential bust in the coverage. They'd go to him. But now it looks like he's just a genuine wide receiver 2 for them, and he's going to get a lot more volume. And with his catching skills, that's a pretty lethal combo. He's also only one of 5 players to have 5 or more red zone targets. So Herbert likes picking him off in the end zone. My other riser is Christopher of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We were talking the other day about the fantasy value of the Buccaneers players, and some of them it's not ideal. Like, I'm not a big fan of Evans or AB just because they're inconsistent, but when it comes to some of the others, their offense is that good. It's hard not to, get lured into their ability. Chris Goblin, 19 targets across the 2 weeks, only 13 catches. You'd expect that to flatten out over the season. He won't be doing that catch rate for the rest of the year. Had 5 red zone targets. I reckon he's a top 10 receiver this year. The way Brady's just throwing that many nuts around. My fallers, as I mentioned, it was tough. So I've gone kind of mythical. Actually, first one, not mythical. Brandon Iuke. I decided to stick the faith last week. Didn't want to overreact to one weird performance, but it looks like they just hate him now. He was my number 16 going into the season. He's had 2 targets in 2 games, and his snap count's actually still pretty decent. It's like mid-50s. Yeah, I just don't know what's going on there. He's not being targeted at all. They're looking to prefer Trent Sherfield and all these other people, and it's just strange footy because he was sick last year, so he's obviously done something to piss off the coaches. But yeah, if you're a fantasy owner of IU, pretty tough times. And then another one, I know this because I have him in my own side, and that's Marquez Callaway. A lot of hype around him coming into the year. He was my number 30 coming into the weekend, but 6 targets in 2 games. He's going to cop the number 1 cornerback every week till Thomas returns, and Winston's averaging like 21 attempts. So there's just not enough volume there for any Saints receiver at the moment. And yeah, it's just, yeah, he's not really relevant in fantasy at the moment. Curtis, wide receivers, mate.
I had quite a few rises, to be fair. First one, going to go with Cup. I mean, the man's been balling, and I don't see it stopping at 9 catches for 163 yards, 2 TDs. Balled out in the first week, balled out again in the second week, and as I just said, I see it continuing. Also had Lockett. I traded him before the season even started for Julio. One of the dumbest things I've done because Lockett has been absolutely balling. He had 8 catches, 178 yards for a TD as well. And yeah, serious upside to him, I think. And yeah, he's rocking me up my board in terms of fantasy rankings. Also had Williams. As you said before, Cork, man's been bowling, and yeah, I'd love to get him as well, to be fair. And another one, a second-year man in Pittman. The man had 8 catches for 123 yards, and I think he's starting to show off that talent that he definitely has. And I think he could be a bit of a steal if someone has him sitting on their bench. And then for the falls, I had AB, who I had in the rises last week. 2.7 points, had 1 catch from 3 targets and 17 yards. Just massive concern with volume. As I said last week, he still does look like the AB of old. There's just too many heads to feed in that offense, and to be fair, even inclusive of Goblin and Gronk, I think you got to be pretty careful with all of them, just because one week they could have mass amounts of targets and put up 20 plus, and then the next week you can be expecting a sub 5. So yeah, just real careful with all of those Tampa players.
Yeah, shout out to AB, one of the sole reasons I got up in fantasy this week. So cheers, brother. I tell you what though, Lockett's on fraud watch. I don't know if anyone saw this, but their little fake Hail Mary at the end is one of the most disgusting stat padding moves I've ever seen. Obviously the Titans set up in the end zone and they were just like, nah, we're getting Lockett a cheeky 40 yards here and a catch. No chance of scoring. And yeah, Wilson and Lockett are on fraud watch. Pilch, who were your wide receivers, mate?
My riser was Cortland Sutton. First game without Judy, 150 yards, and can't see why the man's not going to be a WR1 whilst Judy is out. We all know how talented he is, and he's showed it. And then my faller, same with Kurt, AB. I think everyone just jumped the gun, and yeah, it's just going to be a different week, whichever wide receiver balls out in that offense. So I would be avoiding it. But Chris Godwin, who is the only consistent player in there.
Yeah, that's why I'm glad I didn't tinker my rankings after week 1, because shit like that, they tickle your nuts and they choke you. But by the way, Curtis, you ended up getting CD Lamb for Julio, so you basically went Lockett to Lamb. So I don't even know if that's like a loss. So
nah, but I went Julio and then I went
Lamb. But you ended up
Julio docked him first week.
Yeah, for 1 week. Yeah, relax, bro, relax. You got CD Lamb.
Yeah, well, every week matters when you're 0-2, mate.
Mate. You're going to be fine, brother. You're going to be fine. You're actually legit worried about the real NFL 0-2 stats, but it just doesn't apply to fantasy, mate. you're going to be right. About 4 blokes in our league don't even know what NFL is. You'll be G, brother. All right. Tight ends time. Always tough because no one really cares about the tight ends. My right. Actually, we'll go to Curtis first.
Riser, got to be Hockinson. The man is bowling, and the entirety of that Lions offense goes through that man. So he will be continuing to bowl, and he might be the most consistent tight end in the league at the moment and going into the future. Seems like he might be a consistent 20 given that entire offense is on his back. And the faller's got to be Higbee for me. Pilch said last week that he thought he could be a serious, or I don't know if he said it in the potty, but definitely said it off the potty. That he thought Higbee might be a tight end 10 this top 10 this year, and the man had one catch for 8 yards. So if you have him, alarm bells ringing, mate.
I'm not off Higbee yet. I'm not off him. I'm not giving up that top 10. Nah, I reckon it was against the Colts, mate. They're sick. But nah, it could be a worry. Well, it is a worry, but like I'm not losing faith just yet. But it is for all watch. How did Kyle Pitts go this week? You happy with that pick, mate?
The man's on the rise.
Nah, I saw he was like high in the targets across the 2 weeks. So I was wondering
his targets are going up, mate. He's taking over. I think it's Hurst. So mate, he's gonna be a bowler. I'm ranking him tight end 4, and don't want to hear anything else about it. Cheers, boys.
Tight end 4.
Game script's unreal for him, to be fair. But
exactly.
Matt Ryan has to throw it to the people with the same jersey as him on, not the others.
Take it back, Pilch.
Did any of you watch Mic'd Up from week 1? Because if so, I don't know why. You saying Hock just reminded me. The new Lions coach, absolute cooker. Like
what a man, though. What a man.
Oh, the like man... I rate his hype up ability, but like I don't know how he walks away from a game with a voice. He's scary, but yes. Anyway, my tight ends. I know you boys don't like him, but my rise is the Gronk. 4 red zone targets. He was my number 10 going into the week. He had 14 red zone targets all of last year, and he's already had 4. As I've mentioned the whole podcast, I think Brady's going for that record blatantly. And who's his favourite red zone man? It's your boy Gronk. He's also had 13 targets, which is pretty handy just across the whole ground. Don't get fooled by his average, though, because he's currently catching at 92%, which is unsustainable. His career average is about 65%. So keep that in mind. But I just think his tight end prowess. And I know you don't like a tight end who relies on a touchdown to do well, but he's getting enough targets, and I think his touchdowns are going to be that common. I don't even think it's a bad play if you don't have one of the big boys. Unfortunately, with the Gronk, though, his fantasy value is sort of higher because he's a well-known name, especially in our league. That's sort of how some things work. So, it might be tough to get him, but definitely think he's undervalued. Well, I undervalued him at 10. And then my faller is my boy, George Kittle. Last week, I just put it down to a bit of rust and all that. This week, whole San Fran offense, barring Debo, looked like absolute nutsack. He was my number 2. This week, he's definitely going below Waller, potentially below others. He's had 9 targets in 2 weeks. I don't think he's going to be bad. Like, I still think he's a solid chance of being top 3, but I think the gap between him and the rest is going to be a lot lower this year. I think he's going to come back to the pack, and Kelsey and Waller are sort of going to be on their own. He's had no red zone targets yet, and it's just not fun. Not fun at the moment for a George Kittle owner. The only positive is I don't think their reliance on Deebo Samuel is I don't think it's sustainable. He's had like 20 targets, and the next most is actually Kittle with 9. So I think eventually there's got to be someone else who stands out from the crowd. Hopefully it's Kittle. Could be Iuke. Could be anyone. But right now San Fran could be Mitchell, as he is a running back riser this week. But I won't laugh because it's legit fair. I did see Hasty was out for this weekend.
Sermon.
But yes, Sermon. concussed
He's
on
out.
like play 3 or something.
The man
Yeah.
gets one touch and he's KO'd.
Yeah, that's the only reason
KO'd.
Mitchell came back, because there was no one left. He was like forced to play, and he was still injured. But yeah, anyway, I feel bad for Sam Fran. The injury luck right now is cooked, but hopefully Kittle starts lifting his game. Pilch, tight ends, my friend.
Yeah, I must say it's actually kind of getting a bit strange how often San Fran running backs get injured. There's about 10 injuries to their running backs this season. But my TEs, riser, definitely Gronkowski. Huge riser for me. He's just goated, and he's proved everyone, the entire community, wrong 2 years in a row. And then my faller is actually Mark Andrews, 2 stinkers in a row. Was drafted very high, and he's not living up to it. So certainly a faller.
He was my faller last week. I'm happy with that one. But how do you go this week? Not, like, did he get like 2 points? Oh no, I've versed him.
I swear he scored like 6 or something.
Yeah, he had it. Yeah, he might have scored like 8. Yeah, but yeah, it wasn't great from him at all. I think their extra weapons breaking out not going to help his cause at all. But yes, I am worried about the Kittle Meister.
Sucks to suck, boys.
Thinking about
Sucks to not crack 100 2 weeks in a row, mate.
My team, I just don't even know.
I can laugh at that, even though I had a shocking week. Just before we finish, just a random thought, because you mentioned this, Pilch. Thoughts on Jeff Wilson's fantasy value right now? Does he have any?
When's he back?
He's predicted back like around week 7, week 8, week 9, somewhere around there.
Nah. Seebs. Just not relevant.
Yeah, fair enough. It's an interesting one because they are down to the myths in the roster. Like, so he could come back and legit be the number one, like Curtis thought Mitchell was going to be, but he never was going to be. But you never know.
He was last week. He had 17 carries for 40-something yards.
Yeah, but that's because most
2.5.
Most have got injured. Sermon wasn't active. You know, they had no other choice, mate. But you know who looked better on the weekend? Hasty. His yards per carry thrusted Mitchell. But anyway, I won't bag out.
Yeah, but he had like 3 carries, mate.
Nah, he had like 6 of them.
No, yeah.
And
but he's out for a while.
He went at like 7 yards per carry. But yeah, he is probably out for a while. Anyway, that's been enough dribble for today. We've done 2 NFL episodes. I hope you've enjoyed the fantasy one. In particular, if you haven't watched the in real life NFL, I know it sounds so weird saying in real life NFL, but don't know how else to say it. Go check that one out. Thanks for joining me, boys. Almost said thanks for joining me, joys. Shout out to us for surviving an earthquake, and we'll catch you next week. Good luck to Pornstar Jimmy and the other team in the podcast. See you, boys.